In this video, I'm going to continue building my 3D model by adding the legs, or by adding a leg and an arm. And those are going to be created using a cylinder, polygon cylinder. So let's get started with that. So in the last video, we made these openings for the arm and the leg to connect into the body. And we created the opening with 10 edges. So when I create my cylinder, I'm going to go to Create, Polygon Primitives, Cylinder. And I'm going to modify the subdivision height. I'm going to give that a value of 10. And the subdivision axis, it's set to 20, but like I said, the openings that we created only had 10. So we don't want 20 because then it's going to be much more difficult to make them connect. So I'm going to set this to 10 instead of 20. And I'm going to pull it to the side over here so I can see a little bit better, so it's out of the view of the reference images. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to delete the faces off the top and the bottom. So you can see the only things that I have selected. So to do that, I made a marquee window. And the only things that were selected were the top and bottom faces. So I delete those. And now I can adjust this to follow the shape of my reference images from. So actually the top view is kind of helpful in this. So maybe using a top view would be useful, as well as the front view. So I'm going to hit E to rotate at 90 degrees. And I'm going to move it into position. Maybe from the front view might be a little bit easier to work with. I'm going to stretch. I'm going to locate it near the elbow. That might be helpful. And then I'll hit R to scale it so it stretches into position, more or less. And as long as I'm here, I can already start to shape this closer to the shape of the arm. And I'm going to, so I just double clicked on that edge from edge mode. And now I'm going to go to model and turn on soft select again, because I want some of these other edges to follow as well. So I'm going to hit W and drag this up. And I'm also going to rotate it. So I hit E to rotate, and I rotate it in this angle. And that's so it's going to connect with my, so it can connect easier with my torso shape. And as I'm going around, I'm going to, looks like I need to maybe pull these faces down a little bit. Actually, I'm going to turn off soft select and maybe grab these to pull them down and maybe in a little bit. And I need to start rotating the other direction so I have a nice edge flow for the arm here. So I'm going to rotate this the other direction and then position it for the shoulders. I'll do the same with this. So I double click and I rotate it. And I hit W to move it down. And it's still a little bit big. So I'm just going to hit R to scale it a little bit. And do the same here. So hopefully it's apparent why you want your your 3D model, I'm sorry, your reference images to be in pretty good shape, because it makes modeling a lot faster if you have good drawings to reference. Let me just get this up a little bit. Oops. And then it starts tapering towards the wrist. So I just keep going back and forth between scaling and moving my edges. Maybe I'll pull it in just a little bit, pull it up. Actually, that's probably good right there. And don't worry about getting it perfectly aligned, because you're going to still be making adjustments. And this is also still a pretty rough model. So if I go to the top view, so it looks pretty good in the front view, but you can see that from the top view, I need to make quite a bit of changes to follow this shape. So I'm going to actually start in the middle here, the middle edge, and I'm going to hit soft select and pull those, or push those towards the elbow. And I'm also going to rotate the ends so that they follow the shape of the arm, and pull that down. One thing I do want to say about my reference image that I would actually correct. You do want a slight bend in the elbow, but I drew too much bend in the elbow, which is going to be more difficult to model the hand from, because it's on an angle. So it'd be better to have the fingers lined up with the grid going sideways. So if I just had maybe 20 degrees less bend in the elbow, I could get those fingers to line up a little bit better with the grid, but we'll get to that later. So I'm just focusing on the arm for now. So rotating this back, pulling it more in that direction. Okay, so now it's more or less following the drawing better. Now I'm going to scale these first in the Z and then in the X. Z and X. That's pretty good. Now I'm going to turn off soft select, because it's going to change too much too quickly. So moving and then scaling. Let me do this one as well, actually. And then the elbow area. Actually, I'll pull this one down just a little bit and forward. So I'm most likely going to end up adding more geometry so that this follows a little bit better, but for now we're just looking for the general shape. And they get wider again. And I'll probably rotate this a little bit more. That's probably a little too big. Scale it down. So again, I said it on the previous video. Actually, no, I said it in an email. Even though my character is very muscled, you will probably have the same amount of geometry that I'm at least starting with for your character. So I need to add more geometry eventually, but if you have a fairly simple character, I wouldn't go much less geometry than what I'm doing here, because it's going to make it difficult to connect them together. Especially the biggest challenge is going to be the head, where there's a lot more geometry required for the head to fit into the torso. So that's basically the arm. And instead of starting over with the leg, I'm just going to take this arm and duplicate it. Control D. Actually, before I do that, I'm going to edit, delete by type history just for good practice, and then freeze transformations. And now I'm going to duplicate this arm and drag it down. And I'm going to position it right where the leg is. Actually, let me be a little bit more careful about this. I'll say it's 90 degrees, negative 90. And say 90 here. I'll rotate it in this. Let's see. Like that 180. There we go. So even though the opening is positioned for the right side, I'm gonna flip it so that it's on the left side. But first I'm gonna position it along the grid. And I'm just gonna use that trick where I put a negative in scale 1 or scale X. Oops. I guess if I do that, I don't need to flip it. Let's see. You know what? I'm going to freeze transformations, and that's going to clean this up, and then it'll be easier to figure things out. So now that I froze transformations, scale X should flip. There we go. So now I have the opening on the left side where the opening for the body is as well. And I'll freeze transformations. Actually, I'm going to position a little bit better before I freeze transformations because it's not quite in the right position. So I go to the right view, and I'm going to drop it a little bit more. And so the proportions are a little bit different. I mean, this is a cartoon character, so his legs are a little bit shorter than his arms because he's a beast. See the front view. Yeah, I think I'll leave it there in the front view. But so that's a pretty good start. So I'm going to actually no, I'm going to drag it up a little bit. I can see that the knee is not quite in line. So that's a little bit better. And now I'm going to freeze transformations and do the same thing I did with the arm, just reposition the edges. I'm going to reorient them with rotations, and I'll scale them as well. Maybe I'll rotate this one a little bit more. Maybe drag it up a little bit. So I can give this one a little bit more space. Scale this one out and rotate it. So even though your character is not going to be designed like my character, you're essentially following the same process of just using your reference images to tell you where your edge loops should be and how far you need to scale them or reposition them so that it fits inside your drawing. And a really important aspect of 3D modeling is where joints fall, where the knee is gonna, the edge flow for the knee and the ankles and the hips, because you need enough for animation. You're going to need enough geometry so that the mesh properly deforms like our bodies do. I'm actually going to drop this a little bit more so I can get more of a pinch in his hamstring back here. Maybe I'll drop this one too. That's a little bit better. Scale this. And this last one, position this back further and rotate it. Actually, I'm going to scale this one a little bit wider and pull it back. It's pretty close. And now I'm going to go to the front view and do the same, just following the contours of the leg. So I'm centering it first. I want to make sure it's inside the middle of the drawing, and then I scale it to fit properly. Scale this one down and move it over. Scale a little bit more. And then the knee area, I need to pull it over quite a bit. His knee tapers, so I need to skinny that up. Then it starts to flare out again. Oops. Let's move it first and then scale it. This up a little bit more. And that's pretty good. And then this last one. There we go. So there's his leg and his arm. And you can see that I'm not really taking the shape of the shoulder very well or the glutes very well. But once we connect these to the torso, that's going to give us, we're going to resolve a lot of that. So that's basically the leg and the arm. And I'm going to go through here and yeah, so I already deleted history when it was an arm, and it's frozen the transformations. So that's all clean. So that's the next step. I'm going to stop the video here. In the next video, I'm going to make the hand and the foot out of a box model.